spouse to a high school teacher, she had to say, they were born into the Internet and social media, it is not something they had to learn. Also as a result of which, they are also more self-reliant with research. My little sister, who is just 25, is a high school teacher and she says that being the smart, well-rounded kid is the cool thing. Being the asshole slacker isn't cool at all.
I am a teacher at a high school in Missouri. All of the stereotypes you see in rural high schools are still prevalent. However, almost every group works harder academically. It is no longer cool to get Fs and fail. Even country boys who will never leave the farm or go to college care about getting passing grades. It doesn't really surprise me about the country boys. Contrary to popular belief, farmers in the US actually have to be knowledgeable in several fields. Hey, now. The older generation knows this and encourages their kids in school when their own parents didn't see the use of it.
I teach junior high. Celebrity status of jocks is over, they are just one more social group on campus. Heck, even when I was in high school about 4 years ago, jocks still cared about their grades and stuff. If anything, it was the mock trial and Model UN kids who acted like stereotypical jerks the way jocks do in the movies.
As a student currently in high school, the big thing for our generation, at least in decent schools, is that failure isn't cool. Sure, if you suck up to the teacher and obsess over studying you'll get made fun of a bit, but the kids getting Fs get made fun of a lot more. A lot of the popular kids are actually really smart and get top grades. There's a general awareness that we all need to do well and a lot of aspiration for the future. When I was in HS, which was literally 5 years ago, a lot of the popular kids in our school were the overachievers. Kids who took honors and AP classes while playing on the school sport teams.
Not a teacher but worked the 2 to 10 shift at the local gas station across from the JR High and High School. Kids these days are a lot nicer, more likely to donate to our fundraisers and they have zero problem for paying for each other's stuff when someone's short. Millennials tend to be polite, and Generation Z carries those values too. It's always an older lady screaming, "I want to talk to your manager, haha." My GF is a teacher and she is amazed at how uncool drinking and driving is. Kids are like, "That's stupid, you will kill someone." They literally make fun of kids who do it. In my day everyone drove drunk. I was in college right when Uber was introduced. My first year, everyone drunk and drove. I didn't drink till I was 20, so I was DD a lot luckily. But it was just something a bunch of people did. By the time I graduated, people were seen as reckless and stupid for driving after drinking. "Just take an Uber, don't be a dick" is a common phrase. It's really awesome.
They are generally independent and self-reflective. When I first started teaching I thought I had simply lucked out getting students who were consistently bright, engaged and curious, but having now taught at 3 different universities on 2 different continents, it seems to be a general trend across universities. This whole emotional maturity having improved in my generation compared to my parents' thing is something I started thinking about when my mum described some of the stuff around divorcing my dad. Students are not afraid to just be nice to each other. I teach elementary art and it is so nice when a kid who is pretty unskilled in art show another kid their work, and instead of getting laughed at like when I was in school, kids are just so sweet and will say things like, "Wow, I really love that." I hear kids telling other kids, "I think your work is beautiful," or "I really like your ideas," and I just think of when I was in art kids made fun of my work. In general I really don't see kids being bullies as much as they were when I was a kid. I went to school in a really nice district too with few problems, but I was bullied. Kids here have a much worse home life than kids at my old school, and while they could choose to take it out on others, they don't. Kids help each other too. They know if a student is special and will try to help that student out. They'll offer to walk them to the bathroom, or help them with their drawing, or very politely tell them to be careful with things.
Kids are openly kind and loving regarding their parents. I had a tough football player day in class once. "I love my mum, she's my best friend." I see the old "ugh my parents suick" mentality falling by the wayside recently. Yes. My 15-year-old daughter blew me a kiss and waved when I dropped her off for school today. I wonder if this has more to do with kids who grew up with shitty parents and don't want to repeat their mistakes. High school teacher here, the most admirable quality of the rising generation is their ability to take anything, and I mean anything, and turn it into a meme. And quickly, my god, a perfect example of this was the Etruscan boar, ceramic meme. University teacher here, my students put in way more effort than I did at their age. Granted, the system has pushed them in that direction as well, but they typically have a better idea of where they want their career to go and are willing to put in the effort to obtain that goal. By comparison, I and my cohort mucked about a bit more.
I'm not a teacher, but my GF's mom is a teacher, and it sparked a dialogue. I am a senior in high school and I completely agree. There are people in my classes who argue all the time and don't get along, but when a meme is brought up, everyone in the class, including them, gets along. It's really weird. You can make a joke based on a meme and people in completely opposite groups will understand. Taught art for a spell a while back.
Girls ask boys out more often. Boys are starting to expect girls to be more frank and straightforward with what they want more often, and overall quite happily pessimistic toward the future, a kind of "AHAH we're so fucked" vibe I feel sometimes. I think it's an interesting shift in terms of the brand of their existential angst. Not a teacher, but a former after-school care counselor. Even though it may have just been the school's rules, conditioning, the kids were generally so good at apologizing, owning up to their actions, and being accepting of others' apologies. After whatever situation transpired has calmed down, of course. They always knew to kindly and carefully approach whoever they hurt, make eye contact, and word their apologies in such a way that effectively communicated their apology for the correct reasons. And those being apologized to always knew to say "I accept your apology" as opposed to "it's okay." Kids in my day couldn't figure those kind of communication skills out until at least middle school or high school. The only time I would get a sarcastic "sorry" accompanied with an eye roll and running away would be from a kindergartner, or an older child facing other difficulties.
I worried about my son, who has mild autism, for the first 10 years of his life. I kept telling him that middle school would be hard, kids would tease him, etc., and that high school would be even harder in the same respect. 15 years ago, I would have been right. This was actually a huge thing when I was in high school several years back. There was one particular kid in our school who had autism, but was actually one of the smarter students, especially history for whatever reason, and everyone was super cool to him.
With high schoolers I really noticed how better their style is. Super random, but compared to how lazy I dressed in high school it's impressive. High schoolers try really hard to look good for school. Then you get to university and realize that no one cares because people would literally just go to class in their pajamas or just put a hoodie and call it a day. Maybe cause we're more self-conscious with the internet and stuff.
I asked my wife, primary teacher, and she says empathy and adaptability are the two traits she has seen dramatically improve over her last 15 years. Kids seem to be better at putting themselves in another's position and understanding their situation. Also, they seem to be much more flexible with changes, whether in the classroom or the outside world. They really get each other. As much as they diss on each other, joke around, and yes, get to the point of blows, they can usually put issues aside. Sometimes to a fault, but overall they are pretty understanding of each other. Coming from a senior in high school, this is the most accurate answer here. We are complete dicks to our friends and nice to strangers. High schooler here. There seems to be an understanding with almost everyone that you can make fun of your friends as long as
Nerd, geek culture is more accepted. At my school they are the ones with the largest friend groups. I feel like nerd, geek culture will dissolve and being a nerd will become the norm as technology advances. I wouldn't be surprised if that whole term was growing pains and us as a culture mentally adjusting to the rise of technology. My daycare kids are much more likely to wash their hands than my generation was when we were their age. Lol. Kids are so much neater now, once they're about 8 or 9. They pick up after themselves, are sort of organized, and don't litter when they can help it. I've even had kids at work that couldn't reach the trash can, so they'll come up to the counter and hand me their trash. I went to a week-long school camp and was amazed at how many kids brushes and flossed their teeth as a matter of fact. No one told them to. They seem generally kinder to each other, especially to the kids who are different. When I was in school, the kids who didn't speak English as their first language, or were a little quirky or had disabilities were either avoided or viciously bullied. Today that seems to be the exception rather than the norm. They may be kind, but German children have always been kinder.